Good morning, and welcome to the Chiefs briefing for the November 4th, 2025 general election. Welcome to all of you as Chiefs and Assistant Chiefs for joining us here today. Excuse me. We're presenting this briefing on behalf of our electoral board, including Chairman Hanley, Vice Chairman Pinckney, and Secretary Shapiro, our General Registrar and Director of Elections, Eric Spicer, Deputy General Registrar and Deputy Director, Cheryl Jones, and my name is Robbie, and I also serve as Deputy General Registrar and Deputy Director. And with that, we'd like to turn it over to Eric, our General Registrar, for some opening remarks. Eric?
Thank you, Robbie. I appreciate it. And I want to thank Robbie and the team for all of your hard work. They've put in countless hours getting ready for this. I hope you agree that our team is better than it's ever been before. Thank you to you, Chief and Assistant Chiefs, for all the work that you've already put in and that you're going to put in for this election. And I think the key to your success is planning and preparation. And much like our team, if you work very closely with your election officers, make sure they know what they're supposed to do, make sure that you assess whether they're doing it well or not. You know, if a person's supposed to be checking in voters, make sure that they're checking them in properly. We're going to give you the tools you need. And please feel free to ask questions today and between now and the election and election day. Again, Robbie, we have a fantastic team and we're at your disposal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric. We really appreciate that. I'm fortunate to be joined by a number of other staff from our training and operations team and election officer team today, including our training and operations manager, Sean Rogers, our election officer manager, Arash Sadiyashi, our training and operations specialist, Jean Tenson, and members of our training and operations staff, including Steve Wake and Susan Burnell. Today, we're going to go over a number of topics, including an overview of the election, what's new for this election, and some reminders for things before Election Day, opening the polls, during the day, things about non-routine and provisional voters, walking you through using the voter referral worksheet, reminders about closing the polls, and then we'll open it up to you for questions and answers. At any time, if you have questions for us during this briefing, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Click on the Q&A button, submit your questions, and we're happy to answer them. All right, let's talk about this election. And the first thing to remember for this election is that everything you need to know is in the Chief's notebook. We encourage you to review the table of contents and familiarize yourself with all of the different information available to you before Election Day. This notebook is already available as a PDF online, and you'll be able to receive a printed copy next week or in the black kit that you'll receive right before Election Day. And remember, in that Chief's notebook, there are checklists for every procedure. So all you and your election officers need to do is to follow the checklists. They include all the updates and information from this briefing and every step that you need to follow to ensure that things go smoothly and accurately. Remember, there are purple guides for things to do during your site setup before Election Day, green guides for things to do during opening procedures, yellow during the day guides for your officers to follow throughout the day, and red guides for closing procedures. And during the opening procedures and closing procedures, there is a Chief's opening checklist and a Chief's closing checklist, which helps you make sure that you're doing all the things that you need to do as the chief or assistant chief. For this election, the contests on the ballot include contests for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, House of Delegates. We have a number of different House of Delegates districts throughout the county, but every ballot does have a contest for House of Delegates. There's a school bond on the back. And in some precincts, those in the town of Clifton and town of Vienna, there are contests for town mayor and town council. Now, as we go through this briefing, we're going to go through a number of updates that we've made throughout this year, because we know many of you have not yet served with us in this year. One of the changes we made at the beginning of this year was to update the terminology we use to refer to our voting equipment. And so I just want to make sure to brief you on that as we go through all of the rest of this content. So the devices that were previously known as poll pads are really just electronic poll books, and that's the term we're going to use going forward. We also have express votes, which are more commonly known throughout the country as ballot marking devices, which is the term we'll use for those. And we had our DS200 scanners replaced by our DS300 scanners earlier this year, and those are ballot scanners. So those are the three terms that we'll be using. Speaking of which, what resources will you have available in your precinct on Election Day? Well, each precinct will receive 3 to 5 e-poll books depending on the number of active registered voters you have and what historical turnout has been in your precinct, 2 ballot marking devices, 2 ballot scanners, 2 admin tablets, one for the chief and assistant chief to use, one for the provisional specialist to use, and ballots for 50 to 80% of your voters. You'll also receive 6 to 12 total election officers, which includes the chief, the assistant chief, collector officers, provisional specialists, language officers, and other regular officers. Most precincts will have either 1 or 2 provisional specialists. Our smallest precincts, those with fewer than 500 voters, may not have any provisional specialists, and the chief and assistant chief there will take care of provisional duties. And the couple precincts where we see the highest provisional turnout will have more provisional specialists. But if you have a lot of provisionals on election day, give us a call. We will have reserve provisional specialists on standby that we can send to you if needed. One other important inclusion for this election is that because it is a November general election, we're happy to have high school student pages joining us. We had more than 300 high school students apply to be a page this year, and we've assigned them to different shifts in different precincts across the county. So you may have 0, 1, or 2 pages for an AM shift during the first half of the day, and 0, 1, or 2 pages for the PM shift for the ending part of the day. High school pages are a wonderful asset in any precinct in which they're assigned. And we have a page in the during the day section that goes through all the different tasks that you can assign to them, including helping manage voter traffic, helping maintain the polling place, ensuring an accessible voting experience for voters, and performing different miscellaneous tasks. Some key restrictions on high school pages is that they cannot be issuing ballots to voters during the day or touching or handling voting equipment during the day. But there are a lot of other things that they can do. We also want to remind you that for pages, this is a service learning opportunity. So we hope that you, as the chief or assistant chief, will make sure to involve them and include them in different processes and help them learn about the election process. Also, remember that we have a page oath and evaluation form. This is a form that only gets used in November elections. And on this form, the chief would print and sign your name, and then you would ask the high school page to print and sign their name and to acknowledge that they have read and understood the page oath. At the end of the day, you would then fill out a brief evaluation of that page's performance. So just remember, high school pages are a wonderful addition to your precinct if you have them. Not every precinct will have pages, but many of you will. All right, there's been a lot of different updates throughout this year, and so let's take you through those. And as a reminder, we are going to include the updates that we made for the June primary election and the September special election in today's briefing for those of you who didn't have the opportunity to serve in those elections. The biggest change, of course, this year was the introduction of new voting equipment in every precinct. In our June primary election, we deployed the new DS300 ballot scanners. These are an evolution of the previous voting equipment that we had, and they work faster and better than the previous scanners, but very similar in operation. Then, in our September special election, we rolled out the new Express Vote 3 ballot marking devices. Again, these are a new version of the ballot marking devices from the same vendor we previously had. And these devices are easier to use, the touchscreen is more responsive, and we've gotten great feedback from voters who choose to use these machines. And in this election, the November election, we're now deploying new electronic poll books, new versions of the poll pads. I want to stress that for this is actually the smallest of the updates this year in terms of changes for you, because the actual software on those devices, the way you actually check in voters, is the exact same as it has been before. There are no changes to the functionality of the software and the voter check-in experience. What is different is that we've replaced the older generation of iPad hardware with the newest generation of iPad hardware. So there are some minor differences in the hardware, like the location of the power button or the way that the home button works, but not things that affect you and the way that you would check in voters. So these are the different new pieces of voting equipment that we've deployed throughout the year, and all of them will now be in use in this election. In terms of the ballot scanners, the compartment that used to be referred to as the auxiliary compartment is now called the emergency compartment. So no change in functionality. If your ballot scanner is not working for any reason throughout the day, you can direct voters to first ideally use the other scanner, and if that's not working, to place ballots in the emergency compartment. And of course, to give us a call so we can help resolve the issue. On those ballot scanners, you're going to want to make sure you place 2 zip tie seals, one on the emergency compartment and one on the ballot compartment. This helps publicly display some of the security and chain of custody measures that we're implementing and helps reassure voters that the voting equipment is not being modified or tampered with during voting hours. The seals that you put on the ballot scanners do need to be recorded on the machine certification form. So we updated the top part of this form earlier this year to give you a place to record those seals. If for some reason you need to break the seal and put a new seal on, give us a call and we'll walk you through that procedure, but there is a place on the form to record that information. Now, we mentioned that the e-poll books have been updated, and there's no significant change in terms of the actual software on that device. But one notable change that should make things easier and better for all of you is that we are moving from using individual cases for each poll book to now having one large case. Those of you who've been with us for a number of years, you may remember this is what we used to do, and we've decided to go back to this process. So instead of having a banker's box, a cardboard box with all your different e-poll books, now they're secured in one large Pelican style case again. So you'll have one seal number on that e-poll book case. And so, of course, we've updated the machine certification form to have just one row for the seal number for that e-poll books case. So there's one seal number to check for that case in the morning during opening procedures and one seal to record during closing procedures. And of course, we still have all the standard seals on the other pieces of voting equipment and supplies. Now you can see in the picture on the top left how the different materials for the e-poll books are stored in the case. We've custom designed these foam inserts to be just perfect for the way that we here in Fairfax County use the e-poll books and want to store them best. One notable change for you is that during opening procedures, you will need to attach the arm to the back of the e-poll books. We have instructions in the Chief's notebook for this, and you'll have an opportunity to practice this during the Chief Open House next week. But we just wanted to remind you that this is one change in the assembly process. It's not a huge change, it's not a significant change, but it is a change to be aware of. At the beginning of this year, we updated the voter referral worksheet to make it a little bit easier and faster for the type of non-routine voter you get most commonly, which is someone who needs to do a same-day registration. And my colleague Sean is going to walk you through this later in the briefing today. Excuse me. We also introduced the precinct and address lookup app on the admin tablets earlier this year. This is a new tool that supersedes the My Neighborhood app. It's easier and faster to use, and it's customized for election purposes. We really appreciate our IT and GIS staff who made this for us, and I think you'll find that it works very well when you do need to look up a non-routine voter. When you do search for a voter's address, it'll show you what precinct is associated with that address. It'll indicate if it's a co-located precinct. It'll tell you what congressional district it is, which you may need to look at for the moving conditions, and it'll tell you what the polling place is for that location. So all in all, a very helpful tool specifically for election officers to use. We introduced the provisional bag in the June election this year. This is now a specialized container for holding your provisional ballots throughout the day. So as a reminder, this is a large green bag. During opening procedures, you can see in the top right picture, you do need to secure it with a key and a lock and a zip tie seal. And that needs to go through both the black fabric piece as well as the zipper. Make sure those are actually connected together. And then during voting hours, as voters complete a provisional ballot, you would then take that provisional ballot envelope and put it into the slot on the top of this bag. So this replaces the process that we had last year of placing these ballots into the emergency compartment on the ballot scanners. We have some new posters that reflect the new voting equipment. So instructions for voters on how to use the ballot scanner and how to use the ballot marking device. So of course, you'll want to post these in your voting room. We also have an updated poster for instructions on how to opt out of receiving automatic mail ballots. Sometimes when a voter requests an absentee mail ballot for one election, they don't realize that they've accidentally opted into the permanent absentee list that the state offers. And so there's information here on how they can contact us to update that if they'd like to. The Virginia Department of Elections also provides some posters for the list of acceptable IDs for voters. And what we've done now, starting with the September election, is to take the posters in 4 languages and put them together on one large poster. So you don't have to post 4 different items. Now you can post one poster on the wall, and it's all the information is accessible to a voter, regardless of which language they may speak. In accordance with state updates, we're also providing you a new version of the prohibited area and activities poster. This was updated for the September election and just reflects the latest legal updates. You've been receiving an emergency envelope for a number of elections now. This is a yellow envelope with a large label and it contains the materials that you only need in emergency situations. Excuse me. We've now moved some items into that emergency envelope, including your backup paper poll book, your close of books report, and your final absentee list. These are the three items that you would use if all of your e-poll books were not working. That's a very rare circumstance. It's very unusual that you would need to do that. And of course, you'd call us and coordinate with us if that were to happen. But now, if that does happen, the materials you need for that situation are in the emergency envelope. In general, the items that are in this envelope are rarely used by precincts. And if you don't need to open or use the contents in this envelope, you can just return it to us just as it was provided to you. The orange pouch that we provide to you now contains equipment keys, the password card, and voter permit cards. And the separate keys envelope that we had was phased out last election. Now, this is really important. Make sure that you, as the chief or assistant chief, show this orange pouch to your election officers on election morning during opening procedures before you break the tab seal. This is a Code of Virginia requirement. So please do not break open the seal or open this pouch on Monday during your site setup. You need to wait until Tuesday morning, election morning, show it to your election officers, and then open these contents. And there is a note on the pouch indicating this information. Earlier this year, we updated the election officer oath form. We eliminated the separate compensation sheet form. And so now if an election officer arrives late or needs to leave early, that information is now located at the bottom of the election officer oath form. We of course hope that's not the case, and it doesn't happen in most precincts. But if anyone does arrive late or leave early, go ahead and note that at the bottom of this form. As you may know, the Virginia DMV has introduced a new mobile ID app for mobile phones. And based on guidance from the Virginia Department of Elections, this is an acceptable ID for voting purposes. So if a voter chooses to use this ID, just be aware that there's multiple screens in the app, and you want to ask the voter to show you the screen that's visible to you on the right there, the screen that actually shows you the voter's information. Excuse me. And in terms of a DMV mobile ID, this is something that we have seen a handful of voters choosing to use so far, but we expect over the coming years that this may become a more common form of ID used for voting purposes. So we want you to be aware that it is an acceptable option for voting and for check-in if a voter chooses to present it. And there's more information in the acceptable IDs chapter of the notebook. Now, when we updated our voting equipment this year, we also updated our central election management server. And in doing so, there was some new options that we were able to take advantage of that better help capture a voter's intent on a ballot. Now, what I mean by that is the write-in process, if a voter chooses to write in a candidate on the ballot. As you know, the instructions on the ballot are what's visible here on your screen, that if a voter wants to vote for a write-in candidate, that they need to fill in the bubble next to the words write-in, and then write in that person's name for whom they'd like to vote. So those are still the instructions on the ballot. Nothing about that has changed. What has changed is how the ballot scanner may interpret a ballot if a voter does not follow that instruction correctly. So first, the first image here visible to you is if a voter does follow the instructions correctly. They filled in the write-in bubble and they wrote in the person for whom they'd like to vote. The ballot scanner will recognize and count that ballot. But in addition now, if a voter fails to fill in that write-in bubble, the ballot scanner will still see that and recognize and count that vote as well. There is a situation that we sometimes see where the ballot scanner will not be able to accept the vote. And this is when a voter fills in the bubble for a candidate on the ballot, candidate B here, and then writes in the name of that candidate as well at the bottom. The ballot scanners will now recognize that, and they'll see that the voter has made two vote selections, which is not permitted. As you know, that's considered an overvote. And the ballot scanner will ask the voter if they would like to return that ballot and cast a new ballot instead. If this happens and the voter brings this to you and says, hey, the machine's not taking my ballot, you could let them know it's because they voted twice on this ballot and the scanner's giving them an opportunity to fix that. And what you would do, or ask your ballot officer to do, is to spoil that ballot and issue a new ballot to the voter and to let them know to make sure to only vote for one candidate if that's how many selections are permitted in that contest. So again, this is not a very common situation, but we wanted you to be aware of what to do if it does occur in this election. The election officer evaluation form is now a digital form on your admin tablet. So we've eliminated the paper form, and it's now accessible as an app on your admin tablet. There is one significant change to this form, however, that we want you all to be aware of, and that is that the form that is available to you on the admin tablet only asks you to provide feedback about officers who are underperforming on election day. If they're not able to perform all their duties well, or if there's a performance or behavioral issue. So we recognize this is a significant change from before. So again, previously we were asking you for feedback about all of your officers. Now you only need to fill out this form on election day if you have officers who are not performing up to expectations. What that doesn't change is that we, of course, still want to hear about all of your great officers. But the way that we want to receive that information now is through your post-election survey, the form that we send to you by email on the morning after the election. So again, if you have officers who are not doing well, let us know on election day by filling out this form on your admin tablet. For everyone who's doing a great job, let us know through the post-election survey after the election. The Dropbox chain of custody form was updated earlier this year. It's the exact same content that you're recording on the form. It's just that the form is differently designed to better help you see the different pieces of information that need to be captured. And lastly, I wanted to stress that the SOR Helper app that's available to you on the admin tablets is a required part of the process. All of our checklists and instructions reflect that. So if you remember, we introduced the SOR Helper app as an optional tool last year, and we've now made it required as of this year. What is the SOR Helper app if you've never used it before? Well, it's a tool that's available to you on the admin tablet where you take all the different numbers that your election officers collect on the closing numbers worksheet, which is that one form that captures all the different numbers. You type them into the SOR Helper app on the admin tablet, and the order matches the closing numbers worksheet. And then it will produce a PDF of what your completed statement of results form should look like. We're very well aware that the statement of results is the most stressful part of many of your election days. And we want to do everything we could to make that easier. So now you don't have to worry about which number goes where or am I doing the math correctly. As long as you put the information into the SOR Helper app, then it will let you know where all those numbers go and how they're calculated and tabulated. And then you can just write them down on the paper form. What is very important to stress, however, is that you do need to copy that information to your paper form. We can make this a fully digital process. That's not legally permitted, but we can make it easier for you. So make sure to copy all that information onto your paper form. And then, of course, make sure all of your election officers sign that form. We don't want any of you to come in for missing signatures afterwards. That's a summary of everything that's new for this election, which again is primarily related to our new e-poll books and the larger case used to hold them, and the different updates we've made throughout this year to make the process easier for you as election officers and for voters. With that, I'd like to turn over to my colleague Arash to take you through before Election Day. Arash?
Thanks, Ravi. Hello to everyone, both people I've already met so far while I was on the training and operations team, and those of you who I have not met. My name is Arash Sataishi. I am the election officer manager, and I'm happy to go through a couple of these slides with y'all. If there's anything you take away from my section of the briefing, it's this slide. We'll be in touch with any relevant or important updates between now and through election day. So please make sure that our number is saved into your contacts and our email is whitelisted in your email so that it doesn't get sent to the spam or junk mail folders. Even if it hasn't already, some email services will adjust their filters based on variables we can't control, and we don't want you to miss any of our messages. There are a number of tasks relevant to chiefs that we have consolidated into one convenient checklist for you to look up on the chief section of the election officer portal. This is going to be definitely a good reference for chiefs to keep track of where you're at with your pre-election day tasks, that we have set certain deadlines to make sure everyone stays on track and that we can catch any issues ahead of time. Assistant chiefs and reserves will see a little bit of a different list here, but your responsibilities are a little bit different anyways. Just a couple of things to highlight that will be coming up due soon, and it's best not to put off, are the following. Firstly, contacting your polling place. The facility contact on your election officer portal there should be a list of the types of things in your chief notebook to ask them and to check on. Even for you seasoned chiefs out there, we want to make sure that we're hitting all the topics like the logistics and parking, table and chair availability. We'll get more into that. Coordinating a setup time, especially if you are a long-term chief that is at a new precinct. This is definitely important to make sure of and not to assume it's going to be like your normal precinct. The sooner that this is done, the sooner that any issues that we uncover, we can troubleshoot to help provide for you and your team and the voters a seamless voting experience. You will also see a full list of your roster of election officers broken down by their positions with all the relevant contact information, including phone numbers and email addresses. There's also a template in the chief notebook of the kind of information to convey to your officers as a reference. While we have been also reaching out to your EOs, it is very important that they hear from you as soon as possible so that any issues or concerns can be addressed. We also ask that you keep checking back on the portal even after the deadline has passed, because people inevitably will cancel or drop out or be swapped. And we want to make sure that the reserves and anyone else that's being pulled into your precinct from the wait list doesn't miss any important information. We also may be needing to transfer someone from your precinct to another one based on demand or party parity, but you should be seeing someone assigned in their place. Those new officers, again, will need to be contacted as soon as you notice that they've been added to your precinct with the same information that you would be communicating on your first contact, which again, should be by Friday, October 24th. And one big reason to be in touch with your team is to be able to coordinate your Monday setup. And so to have a successful setup, we need you to go into your portal and select your supply pickup time from one of our 4 depot locations, after which on that Monday before Election Day, you'll be going straight from the depot to your polling place to set up for Election Day with those on your team that can be available to do so. Again, it is very important that you set up a pickup time that can then allow you to go straight to your polling place after doing so, because of the sensitive nature of the materials that you're picking up. Also, unlike in the September special election, for those of you who served then, schools will be closed on Monday the 3rd. We have arranged for a good setup window between 3:30 to 6:30. So hopefully that will help expedite all your tasks. Another thing, just as a additional optional event that you can participate in, is next Tuesday, a week from today, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. will be our chief open house. It is open to all chiefs, assistant chiefs, and reserve chiefs and assistant chiefs. Basically, if you're watching this, you can register through your portal under training. You will see a lot of the same modules or elements as you will see in our closing procedures workshop, our chiefs workshop, and provisional specialist workshops. But a little extra hands-on practice and the ability to have some experienced chiefs and rovers to answer your questions. Aside from all the other chapters, we also ask that you review chapters 14 and 15 leading up to Election Day, so that if something were to happen, you would not be needing to thumb through the notebook, and that you would be acting swiftly and purposefully as the main leader in addressing whatever may have occurred in your precinct. So now switching to opening the polls. Just a reminder, you must set up both ballot scanners for Election Day. That means pressing go to voting mode on both of them at 6 a.m. There are some precincts, this is a November election, but there are some precincts where you may not feel like you will have enough voters. You may turn the second one around, but they both need to be in voting mode and set up at 6 a.m. So that if there's an issue with one of them, we have a backup in your second one, but also if the demand requires it, you can obviously use both. After your voting equipment has been turned on and set up in preparation for the opening of the polls at 6 a.m., the last thing we ask of you is to take the time to gather all your election officers to kind of go over this list of evacuation and other emergency protocols for each one of their positions. We should be notified no earlier than 5:30 a.m. for any election officers that haven't shown up yet. But this is something that should be done after that point before polls open at 6 a.m. So here's some phone numbers. They're going to be on the inside cover of your Chief notebook. There's a lot of information on the screen you can look at on your own time, but just to kind of go over all of it, if it's anything generally that we can help with, you're going to call the first number for general support. However, if it is anything specific to a voter, someone you're not quite sure about their status, they're showing up as something on the poll pad, on the e-poll book that is unusual that you may not have seen before, you have a question about an SDR or provisional, you're going to be calling the voter support number to get to Bushra and her team, who can be much more efficient in helping you with that. As well as if you have any tech issues, if you have a machine that's having something that's unexpected, a poll e-poll book that is not doing something that you needed to be doing, you're going to be calling the tech support number. If you do end up calling the first number, what we'll just end up having to do is transfer you to that. So please just make sure to call one of those other numbers if it's specifically for them to help expedite the solution. Also, if there's anything while you're setting up that you notice that you may be out of or you're short of that will be needed later in the day, we ask of you to wait until around 6:30 or 7:30 in the morning to call us about that so that we can dispatch a rover to get you those supplies. But meanwhile, beforehand, we can give the time necessary to any urgent things that may have come up during setup. And now during the day, we are going to be asking you as normal to do a quick turnout survey at 9 a.m., 12 p.m., and 3 p.m. These will be on the admin tablet. And for those of you who end up with high school pages, you can ask them to help you with this. There will be a full list in your Chief's notebook of the types of visitors that are permitted into the polling place, as well as what they will need to provide to confirm their credentials and what level of access they may have. Those would be authorized representatives from either a party or a candidate, the media, and so on. As a reminder about media, please refer to the notebook for specifics, but remember that there are restrictions that are based on what they can film, where they can do interviews, and for how long they are permitted to stay. And so in terms of order of operations, we ask if there is any sort of emergency, you do call 911 first for immediate assistance, and then we are then notified afterwards. If it is to update us on a previous situation, or if it's something that's related to our office, then yes, obviously please call us. But if it is a injury, if there's an incident that we'll go into a little bit in the next slides, please don't hesitate to call 911. And so going into the medical emergency form in that same thread, you'll find this in the red emergency envelope. This could happen if there's a voter, an election officer, or anyone else inside your polling place within the 40-foot line, usually within your polling place boundaries. An example of this would be Falls, and in our elementary school and even some middle school locations where they may have only supplied us with the smaller chairs and tables. We want to make sure if there's ever any incident where someone trips and falls, this is what you're going to be using, and you're going to be using the reference in your Chief notebook on how to proceed, but you want to complete this before the individual leaves the polling place. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Sean to go over non-routine and provisional voters.
Thanks, Arash. So far we've talked about an election overview, what's new this election and up in this year, before election day, opening the polls, and during the day. I'm going to go into several things relating to non-routine and provisional voters, which is another major part of your day on election day. As chiefs and assistant chiefs, you're the one to determine the how to help voters who have a non-routine situation, that is, they can't be checked in normally at your check-in table in accordance with the Code of Virginia and various related procedures. Before I go too in-depth on those sorts of voters, I'll pause briefly here to talk about some other situations that we have documented in Chapter 10 of the Chief's Notebook. That's Chapter 10, Problem Solving, where you have various situations that aren't necessarily or aren't going to rise to the level of a provisional ballot, but you may need additional guidance on, or a walkthrough, or how to, things like how you can de-escalate a touchy situation, with someone who's upset. If a voter needs a new ballot, they need to spoil their ballot. If a voter has abandoned their ballot in their precinct, or if they've attempted to cast it and left the precinct before seeing that it's been accepted, and explanations for what to do for blank ballots, overvoted ballots, and so on. So you have that chapter in your Chief's Notebook to refer to for those sorts of situations. But turning more to non-routine voters, we offer you many resources. Firstly, I'll mention the Chief's Notebook. It has a chapter on non-routine voters and the what ifs. The what ifs are a document produced by the Virginia Department of Elections that we have incorporated into our Chief's Notebook and updated with our terminology for equipment here in Fairfax County. That's going to be chapter 8 of your Chief's Notebook, available online, and you can also pick up next week. The what ifs, as you can see, have over 20 different scenarios where you ask, what if this has happened? What if that has happened? And so if you want the full explanation, the most in-depth step-by-step procedure for how to help certain voters, you would find that there. And then we also have a summary of the various situations kind of boiled down to a one-sentence overview. And we also give you the exact text that you would find on any given e-pollbook prompt that you could have on election day. So you don't have to wait for somebody to come in who's in that circumstance. You don't have to wait for, say, an inactive voter before you can see what the e-pollbook is going to tell you what to do for those voters. Speaking of e-pollbook prompts, remember that if you have a voter who has a special circumstance that is flagged on the pollbook with a special pop-up or message, you can go ahead and read that message and it will tell you what to do. It will tell you where to refer to for more information. If we take this example, a voter who has had their absentee ballot already pre-processed by our office, you can see that the first line is always going to be an explanation for what that means. In this circumstance, the voter has returned their absentee ballot. Your election officer has an instruction in almost all circumstances. It's going to be to send them to the chief or the assistant chief. And then you have an instruction for what you can offer this voter. In this circumstance, if someone has returned a voted ballot, that means they've already voted, which means the only thing we can offer them is a provisional ballot, and it tells you which reason to check on the provisional envelope. You may hear me refer to a reason code. That's what I mean. In this circumstance, it's number 5, which is that the voter has already voted. And it tells you which section of the voter referral worksheet to refer to as you work through this voter, and where more information is in the what ifs. So we have several different things that we're pulling together that we offer to you as resources. We have e-pollbook prompts, the voter referral worksheet, the full what ifs, and our office is always available by phone if you want to walk through any situation that you've never seen before, or if it's an especially complicated situation. Speaking of e-pollbook prompts, we do have a new e-pollbook prompt, not for this election, but we introduced earlier this year. This is not a change though. This is for protected voters. So as you may already be aware, a protected voter is a voter who is eligible by their circumstances to display a post office box instead of their residential address. Now we here, they are registered to vote with their residential address so that we can assign them the correct jurisdictional combinations and get them the right ballots. But for the public list of registered voters and what you see on the e-pollbooks, it instead displays a PO box. This is just a prompt that pops up for these voters to remind you and your check-in officers that the voter still must just state their name and the address that is on the e-pollbook. In this case, a protected voter has to give you what they're registered with, and that would be what's on screen. If there's any confusion with this, let's say a voter forgot that they were registered as protected, they don't remember what that means, or you just have these so infrequently that you want to make sure you're doing the correct procedure, you can give our office a call. But this is a way for us to give you a reminder that these voters are eligible to vote routinely and normally. They just have to give their PO box that they have provided to our office already. So that is a new e-pollbook prompt, but don't get thrown off by it, and you probably won't see too many of those. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the voter referral worksheet in the next section. As Ravi mentioned earlier, we did update it a little bit this year to help make it easier to use and streamlined for the vast majority of the ones that you're going to see in your precinct and the ones that we get back in our office, which is same-day registrations. However, the voter referral worksheet in general will outline the workflow for you for the most common situations, in fact, most or all the situations that are going to become a provisional ballot. So if you have to work through situation with a voter to help determine their eligibility and help find the best voting option for them. This worksheet is a one-stop shop to walk through the questions that you should ask the voter, the information that you have to write down. For example, with the same-day registration, you'll have to write down their address to determine if it's in your precinct. And it gives you a place to write down what precinct that's in, if it's your precinct or another one, when you use the PAL lookup app, which again, we'll go into in the next section here. But it walks you through and combines all of the information that I just talked about that's in various locations, the e-poll book prompts, the what ifs. These are all just varying levels of detail for the same thing, the same voter situations that we're just trying to help you get to the most efficient and most effective answer for how you can best help that voter. So this worksheet is required for any of the non-routine situations that you see at the top. That is voters who have an absentee status on the e-poll book, voter who is marked as already voted, a voter who is not on your e-poll book at all or has moved from an address that is currently on the e-poll book, so they've moved or they're not registered. Or there's also a section for if you're unsure of what to do. We'll break those down in the next section to help you walk through what to do with these. And the backside of the voter referral worksheet has a checklist for your provisional specialist to use if it does indeed become a provisional ballot that you've offered to that voter. So it starts with the chief or the assistant chief so that you can work through the voter situation. And if you do have it become a provisional, you'll hand it over to your provisional specialist to work through a 12-step checklist with the voter to make sure everything's on track. Again, we'll cover that in a moment, but that is the most kind of boiled down reference point for you to help out non-routine and provisional and non-routine voters. Before getting more in depth for that, I just want to touch on a couple of common non-routine situations. If a voter has moved or they are not on your e-poll book at all, they would be a same-day registration. Reminder that a same-day registration is for a voter who is not currently registered or their registration is not up to date and can only be performed in the precinct where they live. So the most important thing with a same-day registration, an SDR, is to determine, is the voter standing in front of you, does their current address belong to your precinct? Remember, an SDRs can only be in the precinct where they live, and so that's the most important thing to keep in mind. The second one that we see a lot of, and this one is much more straightforward in some respects, is the absentee surrender process. If a voter requested and has been sent an absentee by mail ballot, they can bring that into the precinct and surrender it to you to vote on machine normally, routinely, and cast their ballot on the ballot scanner. This is a pretty straightforward process. It's just one of our more common ones. Another reminder that the provisional envelope is two-sided. It has one side for SDRs, which is stamped with a large SDR on that side, and the other side is for all other provisional reasons, the non-SDR side. Make sure if you've decided I'm doing an SDR for this voter, the voter is filling out the SDR side of the envelope. If they're voting provisionally for any other reason, they're filling out the other side. Both sides of the envelope ask for the voter's information, but they ask for different pieces of voter information. So we want to make sure they're filling out the correct side pertaining to their circumstance. To help you out, we've had these since last November as a checking tool for your provisional specialist and for you to help make sure that the voter has filled out the provisional envelope completely and entirely and all the required sections that they have to complete. We offer these plastic provisional overlays that you can lay on top of a completed provisional ballot to double check at a glance, do you see anything missing or do you see anything amiss? You can see that the provisional ballot envelope has a lot going on. There are spots that the voter has filled out. There are spots that the election officer has filled out. And there's a lot of optional sections, sections 4 through 6 on the SDR side and various sections on the non-SDR side are optional, and it's hard to see exactly what you need to focus on. If we overlay the plastic overlays onto the envelope, you can see it separates out and includes the non-required information and lets you only focus on what the voter must complete. There are several checkboxes you can see on the SDR side of the envelope that we've highlighted just a couple of answers because those are the most common answers that we see. However, you want to make sure that an envelope is complete. So if you see anything amiss when you lay the overlay on top, Keep in mind that it's not a magic tool. You still have to use your eyes to take a look at it and determine, is anything missing, right? So if you do, you would remove the overlay and give the voter a chance to complete any missing information that they forgot to fill out. Speaking of missing information, one of the most common mistakes that we see on the provisional envelope, this is on the SDR side of the provisional envelope, is the answer to question number 3. And that question asks the voter, have you been convicted of a felony or been judged mentally incapacitated and disqualified to vote? It's a 2-part question. The voter will either answer yes or no to that question. If they answer no, they don't have to answer that second question. You can see it says, if yes, has your right to vote been restored? However, if they answer yes to the first part, they do have to provide an answer to that second section. Your role in this process is to make sure that the voter has provided complete information on the envelope to our office. And it's pretty easy for someone to miss a conditional situation for a second checkbox. So take a look at the that section of the provisional envelope. On our overlay, we highlight just one of those checkboxes because, again, it's what we see most commonly. But the voter just has to provide a complete answer to that question. And we see that it's if the voter is moving through the provisional envelope, it's something that's pretty easy to overlook as you're going down the line. So keep an eye on that one. That's something to just be aware of. Another common mistake, and this is not on the part of the voter, but something that we see here in our office. I want to give you a reminder that reason number 6 on the non-SDR side, the other side of the provisional envelope, should be quite rare. If you have a reason code number 6 that you're thinking, I'm going to give this voter a provisional for an other reason, we'd ask that you pause and take a moment to consider, could this be another provisional reason that is already listed there? And our office is always here by phone. Give us a call so that we can help walk you through it so we can make sure you're on the right track. Because in our experience here, a lot of the reason code number 6 provisionals that get issued could have been another reason code and often could have been an SDR instead. So a common example that I'll give is we have something called the close of books, a certain number of days before an election where a voter cannot register or make a change to their active registration. They can submit an application. They can go online to the DMV system and update their address or register to vote. However, it won't be reflected on the poll book until after election day. So if I'm, for example, not registered to vote 3 days before the election, but I go to the DMV and I register, and I tell you that when I come to the precinct, you would still need to give me an SDR because for all intents and purposes, I've missed that registration window, so I'm not on your poll book. I need to do a same-day registration. And the action that I took at the DMV would just be regarded as a duplicate. That's kind of an example of something where you can try to reason through it and go astray. I just want to provide that as a common number 6 that we see. Remember, if a voter is not on your poll book, that's your cue to go for an SDR, so long as they qualify for an SDR and they're in the right place. The provisional log that your provisional specialist or you would be filling out for every provisional voter will give you a spot to clarify. Let's say you have a voter who does not want to go to the correct location. You've told them, you've arrived in the wrong location. I can tell you where to go to do your SDR or to vote, and they really, really want to vote where they are. It gives you a spot to let us know that information too. So that's another mistake just to let you know about while we're on this section. And the last reminder I'll give you, Ravi mentioned this earlier, is that all provisionals go into the provisional bag that is locked throughout the day. You'll open this up at the end of the day, which we'll talk about in our closing section, to put the provisionals into their appropriate envelopes 1A. Just be sure that you or your provisional specialist is entering these ballots, these envelopes into the provisional log on the admin tablet before inserting them into this bag because it will be locked throughout the day. All provisionals go into this SDR or other. So in this section, we're going to drill down a little bit deeper into how you can use the voter referral worksheet. If you haven't served since last November, as Ravi mentioned, we've updated it slightly to optimize it for you. If you have served, this will serve as a reminder to show you how this worksheet is intended to help you and how you can get to the appropriate answer for how best to help these voters. So I'll walk through the steps. There is one side for the chief and the assistant chief, and that has you fill out the voter's information and your information and what their circumstance is. And you can see there are 4 different sections in dark gray. For any voter, you would really only be filling out one of these 4 sections. So don't get intimidated by seeing a lot of text. It's really just a choose your own adventure worksheet for the voters in those circumstances. Once you've decided that a voter is going to be voting a provisional ballot, once you've decided this is the option that I'm going to offer to them based on their circumstances, the backside of the envelope has a section for you at the top as the chief or the assistant chief to mark this is the reason that they are voting provisionally, and this is the side of the provisional envelope that the provisional specialist should have them fill out. And everything below that is a checklist for the provisional specialist. So you can see that's that full checklist that the provisional specialist is walking through with the voter to make sure that they filled out everything completely, and that the provisional specialist has taken all the appropriate actions, including checking the envelope, having someone double check with them, entering it into the log, and so on. We'll talk about those as we get to it, but those are the 2 sides of the referral worksheet. So I won't belabor the point on these steps here. I'll just say that the this is the top section of the referral worksheet. It's when you would start it, when a voter has been sent over to you from the check-in table because they could not process that voter routinely, and they fall into one of these circumstances. If it's a voter who does not fall into one of these circumstances, this worksheet would not be necessary, strictly speaking, but you are welcome to use it if it's a helpful guide for you, because there is a section that's helpful for any situation. But these are the 4 situations. Like I mentioned earlier, a voter has an absentee status on the poll book. They're marked as already voted. They're not on the poll book, or they have an address issue or change, or you're unsure. So let's go through those sections and show you what those look like kind of zoomed in so you can get a preview before election day, or if it's been a while since you've seen them. Section A for absentee helps you when a voter has an absentee status on the e-poll book. And this shows you the questions that you should ask the voter and the circumstances they may be in. If a voter is on issued, did they bring their ballot or did they not bring their ballot? Or if they have some other poll book prompt, what options do you have for them? So these options that you'll end up giving them could be the absentee surrender process if they've brought their ballot, or a provisional ballot with reason code number 4 if they've not. And if they have another reason, you'd also offer them a provisional ballot, but for a different reason. Let's say, like our prior example with the e-poll book prompt, the voters return their voted ballots. So if you see any of those red banners on the e-poll book, they're all in red. Every absentee situation is going to be in red. This is going to be the section you're going to jump to on your referral worksheet to help you determine what is this voter's voting option. So that one's pretty straightforward. The next one is also pretty straightforward. Section B. For a voter is marked as already voted. If a voter has, say, forgotten that they voted during early voted, or they came in earlier that day, they come back later that day, or let's say you have somebody who lives at the same address and a very similar name, in whatever circumstance it is, the voter has come into the precinct and they're marked as already voted. This gives you the steps to take. Firstly, you want to make sure that you have looked up the correct voter to make sure that your check-in table didn't accidentally send you someone who is eligible to vote routinely. Once that is confirmed, their option is to vote a provisional ballot. And as you can see, there's only 2 checkboxes on this one because the decision workflow isn't too complicated. If you want more information, though, you can always refer to the what ifs or give our office a call. We can help you out. Let's jump into the section that has the most for you to work through here. This is the situation where a voter is not on your e-poll book at all, or they've moved. So section C is for anything related to an SDR or an address, if they've changed or they're not on your EPB. What you want to do is, again, make sure that you've looked up the correct voter, and if you can't find them, you can call and the voter insists they're registered, you can call our office. But either way, you want to make sure that you've done an advanced search to make sure that you found this voter is definitely not registered. And section C always asks you for the voter's current address. You can see there's a spot to write that down and their precinct. And then the next section lets you decide what to do with that information. So section C is always, what is the voter's current address to help you make that determination? You're going to be using the precinct and address lookup app. Again, that's on your admin tablet. It's a custom built application for our use here on election day to provide you the information that you're going to need for an SDR, for address moving conditions voters who have something going on with their address or they've moved. In the example that I'm going to walk through here, suppose I am the chief for precinct 849 Newgate North. You can see that's a co-located precinct. If you happen to be in one of our co-located precincts, there is a tag to let you know that. So if you have, you're not just going by the polling place, you're going by the name of the precinct. And if I'm in Newgate North and I'm looking at voters all day, I would see voters with an orange tag. If I see a voter who has a different color tag, and that would be my pause to say, maybe we need to send them to the other side of this polling place. But either way, that'll make sense to you if you're in a co-located precinct. Again, for this example, imagine I'm the chief of precinct 849 Newgate North, and the voter has given me their address at 6201 Sandstone Way, Clifton. So I've used the PAL app to look them up, and I got that information to write down on my voter referral worksheet. I've written down that address, and I've written down that precinct and congressional district. And again, I'm the chief of precinct 849 in this example, and the voter, this imaginary voter, their current address is in precinct 849. So that voter would be eligible to proceed with an SDR, and I can go ahead and flip over to the backside and get them started with our provisional specialist. Let's say though, for sake of argument, we can proceed with section C2 of the worksheet. This is sort of a drop-down section of the worksheet. This is, you can continue if instructed above. Again, just go ahead and read through the referral worksheet, because it is giving you instructions for how to complete it and how it's meant to help you get the information you need and get to the answer for how to best help a voter without building up a line of voters. You would proceed to section C2 if a voter has moved, let's say they're not in your precinct. You look them up and they're not in your precinct, they cannot proceed with an SDR. So let's say we have another hypothetical voter who gave me the address 4029 Ridgetop Road. I looked that up and that's in precinct 132. And again, for this example, I'm in precinct 849. So I know I can't have this voter do an SDR. What can I do for them though? I would proceed to section C2 to get some additional information. This is where we jump into moving conditions. So I have to ask the voter, what's your former address as listed on the poll book? I'll look them up on my e-poll book as well and see where have they moved from? What was their old address? In this circumstance, I find that the voter's prior address was at an address on Braddock Road in Clifton, and I find the precinct and congressional district for this address, and I have to find out when they moved. So when you're doing a moving conditions, when you're helping a voter with moving conditions, those are the three pieces of information that you need to collect. You can see on the referral worksheet, we've collected all three of those. It's the prior address, its precinct and congressional district, the current address, and that information, and when they moved. So I see that their old precinct was my precinct. They moved to a new precinct, and it's within the same congressional district of this year. This is when you have to jump over to your moving conditions grid or flowchart. This is in your Chief's notebook, in your what ifs, and you have to say, you have to ask how far did the voter move and when did they move, for what options I can give to them. So I'm going to say that, remember, the voter moved to a different precinct within the same congressional district on or after November 6, 2024. If we trace out those circumstances, either with grid or with the flowchart, whichever is the way that the way that's easiest for you to think through a problem, we're going to get to the same answer. This voter would have two options. Recall that a voter can always do an SDR in the precinct where they now live, and that would be appropriate for this voter. If they had happened to show up to precinct 132, they would be able to do an SDR there, no problem. This voter would have an additional option based on the circumstances of their move that we worked through with the flowchart and the grid. And that's that they can vote in their old precinct where still registered because they haven't moved too long ago and it wasn't too far. So this would be an example of how I would complete the voter referral worksheet after having referenced my moving conditions. And I find that the voter is still eligible to vote in my precinct. Remember, I'm the chief of 849 Newgate North. I don't really need to send them to precinct 132. The voter could go to precinct 132 and do an SDR if they wish, but generally you're going to want to give the vote. You're going to want to help out the voter to vote where they're standing, because that's going to be the option that's most convenient for them. You never know if the voter is going to make it to the other place or not. So the option that I'm going to offer this voter is that they can still vote in precinct 849 Newgate North. In their circumstance, they would have to fill out a new voter registration application to update their address. So this is an example of how you walk through these moving conditions. That was a boiled down, quickly run through example where I talked about the different resources that you reference and where you write down information. And not all of them are going to be that exact same answer that I just talked about. When it comes to moving conditions, they can get complicated somewhat quickly depending on the voter's circumstance and the story that they have. So reminder that section D, this worksheet is also used for if you're unsure of a situation. If you have a moving conditions problem that you're working through with a voter, if you need to check what's going on with their prior registration or their current registration, or if you just want to walk through a voter who's not registered or has moved, you're always welcome to call our office. We're always here to help, and we encourage you to call us if you have any doubt at all. We are happy to walk you through a voter situation and help you check the correct precinct and just make sure you're on the right track. There's a section on the voter referral worksheet to just give you a free space to write down anything you needed to remember from a conversation with us. And if everything I just talked about in my hypothetical example of a voter who's not registered or has moved, if some of that isn't making sense or it's a lot to go through in a short amount of time, I agree with you. We have a Chiefs open house next Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Arash talked about that earlier. That is available in the election officer portal, and you can sign up for that now to take a time slot to come on in, get your Chiefs notebook, and we'll have example situations for voters in an SDR circumstance or who has moved, so you can help work through that sort of logic and workflow to help you kind of get that practice under your belt, so it'll seem much easier and less intimidating to you on election day when you have voters actually coming into your precinct. Finishing up here, recall that there's a backside of the voter referral worksheet where you mark if the voter is indeed voting provisionally, what that reason is. If they're not voting provisionally, you don't need to continue to this section. We're just going to complete the worksheet here for this example. Let's say a voter has to vote you're offering them a same-day registration. You would check that, and your provisional specialist would continue at their table, which should be near yours, to have the voter vote their provisional ballot there while you can continue with the next non-routine voter or managing your precinct or whatever other action you have to take as the chief or the assistant chief, so you can not have to necessarily be with that voter for the entire voting process. That's what your provisional specialist is going to be there for. So they have a 12-step checklist that keeps them on track as well. Be sure that this voter referral worksheet follows the voter to them. And again, they should be nearby. This makes sure that they are directing the voter to complete the envelope fully and completely. And step 6, you can see there's a requirement to check that everything's complete and have someone else check that that's complete. It can be anyone, the chief, the assistant chief, or any other officer who's available. And then it has instructions for the steps that the voter needs to take to seal their ballots into the provisional envelope, to give the voter the required provisional notice that we need to give them, enter it into the provisional log, give them their I voted sticker, and insert it into the provisional bag. So this is a helpful checklist to keep them on track. When they are done with the checklist and the voter has finished the provisional voting process, all voter referral worksheets are returned in envelope number 8. So envelope number 8, as you may already be aware, is for a lot of voter forms, voter registration applications, requests for assistance, affirmation of eligibility, ID confirmation statements, and also voter referral worksheets. These can go right in there. They don't go in with the provisional ballots in the provisional envelope because we won't be able to open those until or unless the board has decided to voted to count their ballot. So go ahead and return those in envelope number 8 with the other voter forms. As those are proceeding, you can leave envelope number 8 on your table, the chief's table, or you can leave it nearby so that the provisional specialist can access it, or they can hand it to you, whatever works best for your precinct. Every precinct is going to have a slightly different layout, but however you can make that happen, that's up to you. So again, we've talked about some specifics for this election and some reminders for before election day, opening the polls. And we talked a lot about during the day, focusing on non-routine voters with me just now. I'm going to hand it on over to Jean here, who's going to walk you through some reminders for closing the polls, which is another part of the day that can be stressful for some people. So she'll give you some reminders here to help hopefully make that a bit easier for you. Jean?
Thanks, Sean. First of all, a big shout out to all of you who are new chiefs and new assistant chiefs, or if you're returning after not having served for a while. There's been some changes to our procedures over time, but we're going to get you set up and make sure that you're fully trained, you know what you need to do. So the polls are now closed. The last voter has left the room. Get a drink of water, take some deep breaths, and slow down. This is the time of the day when people make the most mistakes because they're focusing on hurrying out the door instead of, hey, let's get all of this stuff done correctly. So take a breath. You've got this. We've got you. And we're only a phone call away. You have checklists for every task you can imagine. So everything's going to get done. So there's no need to hurry. You have a Chief's closing checklist. This is your top level guide to how you're going to be handling the rest of the night. So take a look at this, make sure that you are very familiar with it as you plan out how you're going to handle closing. Help your election officers get comfortable with what they're going to be doing at closing by letting them read those red closing guides sometime in the late afternoon. That's usually a quieter time where they'll have a few minutes to study that. And you can talk about what they're going to be doing and what questions they might have. Every single job has a closing guide for it. Give out pens with the closing guides. Tell your officers, check off those boxes as they go. Mistakes happen when people are in a hurry and they don't follow the steps in the checklists. Your guide is going to be the chief's closing checklist. You're going to use that to manage the entire process. As they complete their tasks, your job with the assistant chief is to verify they've done everything correctly. So it's delegate and verify. Those are your two watchwords that will get you through the closing part of the day easily. And by the way, wait until all the voters have left your voting room before you start closing. And that means don't even take down your signs. The closing numbers worksheet is the most popular document at closing. It seems like everybody needs this at the same time. So it's kind of like the old, we used to have a different form where we collected stuff. This is just going to be something that'll be around the room. You know, one person's going to need it, then the other. That's okay. As each team does their part of the process, they will record various numbers on this sheet. You're going to need this later to do the SOR helper. So the closing numbers worksheet needs to be completely filled out. If anything's missing, hand it back to the people who should have done it. We do sometimes get closing numbers worksheets in the Canvas the day after the election that are not completely filled out. So now let's talk about some important things to watch out for as you go through the closing process. Number one is closing the ballot scanners. You're going to want to do this in a particular order. The one that has the most votes on it for the day first. That's the highest public count. Start closing this scanner first so that if anything goes wrong as you close this scanner, you still have that other scanner up and running, that you can use as a backup. So close scanner number one, get it completely down, then you move on to scanner number two. I'm going to hammer on this one. Do not pull the flash drives from the scanners until they're completely shut down. That means the screen is black. You've waited maybe an extra 30 seconds just to be sure. If you pull those drives out too soon, the data on them is going to be corrupted, just like crashing the hard drive or the SSD drive on your computer. Now you've got a scrambled mess. If that happens, order pizza, because you're going to be here for another few hours rescanning all of your ballots on the other scanner, which hopefully you kept open as that backup just in case. So again, don't pull your flash drives until the scanner's completely powered off. We know the collector officers are waiting on those. That's okay. They can just hang out until everything is ready. It's more about getting it right than getting it fast. If you do run into any issues with your scanners during closing, don't try to figure it out yourself. Call the tech support line on the inside cover of your Chief's notebook. They're going to walk you through whatever the steps are for your specific situation. And do please document that in your chief's notes. Let's talk about those flash drives again. What do you do with them after you've gotten them from the officers who closed the scanner? They will have given you 4 drives, 2 with purple labels, 2 with white labels. They are color coded. There's purple and white. I'm going to say this a lot. The 2 drives with purple labels go into the purple pouch, which you will seal with a zip tie seal through the hole, the grommet, and then also through the zipper pull, as you can see in the picture. The 2 drives with white labels go in envelope number 7. Purple and purple, white and white. Even look at the labels themselves that they say where to put them. Purple pouch and white envelope. Super easy. Match your colors. You're going to get this right. This is part of your responsibilities as chief. It's in your chief checklist. Please make sure that you double check you've put these drives in the right places. Use your checklist and you can't go wrong. So let's say a couple things about the provisional specialist closing. They are going to follow their closing guide and sort all the provisional envelopes into 2 piles. They will have one for SDR and the other for non-SDR. Each of those 2 people will independently count the envelopes in each pile, make sure they've got the same count, and record those numbers on the closing numbers worksheet. Finally, they're going to take the piles and put them in the appropriate envelope 1A, and then give those envelopes to you. Return all envelopes 1A, even if you don't use them. We need that affirmative that let's say you didn't have any non-SDRs. If you give us back an envelope that says 0 on it, we'll know for sure that you didn't have any. Now your collector officers have been chomping at the bit, waiting for everybody to finish closing the scanners, etc. But they've been busy too. They have a collector officer guide for closing, and that tells them how to disassemble the drop box, how to prepare the chain of custody form, and the trip lock security bag that those Dropbox ballots go into. Here's a tip for those collector officers. It's in their guide, but they often skip over this. Make sure they tear the receipt strip off the top of the bag before they seal it. Sometimes they get it out of order. I know the collector officers want to leave as soon as possible, but stop them. Make sure they have everything. It should be exactly what you see on the screen here, a trip lock bag that has 0 to some number of absentee ballots in it, a sealed purple pouch with what color flash drives? Purple. And at least 2 green envelopes 1A. There are a few precincts where we expect a larger number of provisional envelopes. The government center is one, so they may have a couple extra, but everybody will have at least these 2 green provisional envelopes. If you are in a co-located precinct, there's only 1 set of collector officers, so take everything you see on the screen here and double it. There will be 2 trip lock bags, 2 purple pouches, and at least 4 green envelopes 1A. We've had a number of good questions in the chat about the e-poll book case, the new case. We've got a suggestion here for you on packing this that'll make it a little easier to manage that case. If you load everything kind of towards the center, that will help keep the weight in the middle and make it just a little easier for you to lift and carry it, put it in your car, and just easier to transport. Notice that you do have to take the support arms off the back. And if you have more, this shows just 3 poll books, but a larger precinct could have up to 5. A note about the statement of results. This is the most important document you do all day long. So as we've talked about earlier, we gave you a tool to make this literally a breeze. If your officers have completely filled out the closing numbers worksheet, you plug those numbers into the SOR helper on the admin tablet, It does all the math. It tells you whether there's anything that you need to double check. Then it gives you an image, a PDF that you can see on screen of a filled in version of your SOR. All you do is copy the numbers off the screen onto both copies of the paper SOR. Write any explanations that are needed, and everyone present at closing signs. The reason we require this is that we've found that the precincts that do the SOR helper have better SORs. We get a better outcome because it's helping them make sure they don't overlook anything. It's making sure their math is right. And it's pointing out, hey, something doesn't add up. Do you want to go double check this number? So do this. And again, if you get stuck, call that general support number on the inside cover of the notebook, and we will make sure that you get your SOR completed. Remember the drives. I told you you're going to put the 2 purple drives in the purple pouch. The 2 white drives go in the white envelope number 7. But it isn't just you put that in the envelope number 7. You also have in there all your cut zip tie seals, the seal from the trip lock bag, the red seals from the ballot scanner printer compartments. It's the seal dumpster, basically. But you, in addition to putting these white flash drives in, turn the envelope over, and there's just a little bit of info to fill out on the back. And we've made this so it's almost like a copy and paste. You go to your machine certification form where you have recorded your closing numbers and your closing seals. And you copy the serial numbers for your scanners, your opening seal, your opening protected count, opening public count, and your closing seals, closing count for protected and public as well. It's almost literally a copy and paste. And before you seal this envelope, do another check. Make sure you have 2 flash drives in here with white labels, right? White labels. All righty. There is something we jokingly, and it is just a joke. We call it the walk of shame. In the last 2 elections, 20% of precincts had at least one missing signature from a document or a scanner tape. 20%. That means dozens of people had to make that walk of shame and come to the office after the election to sign something. And you can bet they weren't happy about it. Nobody would be, because you've done your service for which we are so grateful. You have served in the election, and then for you to get an email or a phone call from us saying, hey, you forgot to sign something, you're not going to be happy about it. So we've got a guide for that, right? Just like we do for everything. Give this guide to someone and assign this as you are the signature police. You are going to make sure that everything's been signed. Then you, the chief or the assistant chief, can do it. Double check them. Delegate but verify. Make sure that you are not part of those 20% of precincts. In fact, let's get that down. Can we get it down to maybe 5% for this election, which would be absolutely fabulous. And in case you're tempted, don't. You cannot pre-sign anything during the day. Everything's got to be signed at night. Let's talk about cage packing safety. We're just about done for the closing and for the briefing. Take a close look at the red arrow here. There are metal sign frames sticking out through the wire cage. Those are a serious hazard to the people who are loading these cages on and off of the delivery trucks and in our warehouse. They're just about at eye level, which is a really bad place. Make sure that your officers have that cage packing guide and are following it in order. If they put the things in the cage in the way that we ask you to on the checklist, everything's going to be safe, everything's going to fit, and our voting equipment team and our supplies team will be able to break these cages down much more safely and efficiently. As you're getting ready to walk out the door, you're locking the cage, but we get several cages back every election where the they're really haven't been locked correctly. The slide bolts there's two of them, one at the top and one at the bottom. They are kind of hard to move, but you've got to make sure the slide bolts are fully engaged so that they keep the doors closed during transport. Things can slide and fall off the top of the ballot scanners. They can even fall out of the cage completely. If you look where the red arrow is, there's a blue bag there that slid down in front of the scanners. So try to get those bolts in. If you're having trouble with it, have another officer try or ask your rover for help. And another tip to watch out for on your cage here is be sure to fill out that cage security log when you're closing it at the end of the night. You need to write down the seal number when you've closed the cage. And then that seal number also goes on the machine certification form. That is probably the most common omission from the machine certification form is your cage closing seal. It's all part of chain of custody. All right, load up your car. Time to go. You're going to come back to the depot where you picked up your supplies on the Monday before the election with 5 things: a black kit, an e-poll book case, 1 or more boxes of voted ballots with a number 3 label, 1 or more boxes with blank ballots with a number 6 label, and your chief supply form with the windshield sign on the back. This form is a chain of custody document saying you're returning these things to us, so be sure that you sign that. And one last thing, call or text your rover before you leave. They can't go home until all the precincts on their route go home, so they need to hear from you that you've left. We've heard from rovers that sometimes end up driving to a precinct that they haven't heard of, only to get there and find the place is dark and everyone is at home in bed. So give them a text and let them know that you're all done. And it's time for Ravi to take over to give you your final reminders.
Thank you very much, Jean. We've gone through a lot of content with you here today. Remember, again, all of this is in your Chief's notebook. It's in your checklist, and we want to do everything we can to help prepare you. But we wanted to make sure to brief you and remind you about some of the things that are new and different, or the things we see that are common mistakes. All right, if you would all raise your right hand and repeat with me here. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will perform the duties for this election according to law and the best of my ability, and that I will studiously endeavor to prevent fraud, deceit, and abuse in conducting this election. Congratulations. On behalf of the Electoral Board and the General Registrar, you are now sworn in for this election. And you, as the Chief or Assistant Chief, are going to swear in your election officers on Election Day. Now, we're going to email you a link to take a short quiz to receive credit for watching this briefing. We're going to send that to you after this briefing ends here today. But just make sure to complete that as soon as possible, but no later than Sunday, October 19th. That's this Sunday. And then we're going to send you some reminders next week about some of the tasks that are due next week. But for this week, the main thing you need to do is simply take that attendance quiz and confirm that you've understood the content in this briefing. All right, now we want to answer any questions you may have. We've already gotten a lot of questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen, but if you have a question that hasn't been answered yet, go ahead, click that Q&A button and add your question, and we'll get to it here. And if we don't answer your question today, you can always reach us by email or by phone at the information listed on your screen.
Okay, Ravi, we're going to have Susan and Steve handle our questions for today.
Sure.
And if
before
you're
we get to
ready,
that, let me just introduce everyone that we've got here, Jean. It's all good. We're all eager to get started here. But I'm happy to be joined by our other Deputy General Registrar and Deputy Director, Cheryl Jones, our IT Manager, Cord Whitehouse, our Communications and Compliance Division Chief, Sean Stewart, our Voter Services and Same-Day Registration Manager, Bushra Ardalan, our Voting Equipment and Logistics Manager, Tyrone Allen, our Election Supplies Coordinator, Justin Knairdschild, our Clerk to the Electoral Board, Polling Place Liaison, Page Program Coordinator, Beth Vessel, and our Deputy Registrar for Early Voting Satellites, Florence Brown, and our Deputy Registrar for Absentee Voting, Ben Howard. And before we get to all these questions, I know Flo has a great update for us on how early voting is going. Flo?
Thank you, Ravi. Good morning, everybody. Greetings from the early voting side of the House, where every day is election day. I'm happy to report that business has been very good for early voting. As of yesterday, 31,005 people have voted across our 3 locations that have been open since September 19th. So that's a total of 18 voting days. We have 13 additional sites that'll be opening next Thursday, October 23rd, which also starts 10 consecutive days of early voting. We'll be open 2 Saturdays, Saturday, October 25th, and Saturday, November 1st from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we also have 1 Sunday of voting this cycle. We'll be open on Sunday, October 26th from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. So you can still get your football in if you come early. Please come see us at one of our 16 locations. Tell your friends and family, cast your vote early before Election Day so you can cross that off your to-do list. And we look forward to seeing you. And that's all we have for early voting.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Flo. We also have Ben. Ben, would you like to give us an update on how absentee mail voting is going?
Sure. We are doing quite well. We've mailed about 83,000 ballots. Today is actually our first day of open extract and scanning. So I've got a whole team downstairs working away at starting to count those ballots for the November election. We have about 30,000 back so far, and we're expecting another 20 to 30,000 in total. So we should have about 70% of our absentee ballots back, or about 50 to 60,000 total. We are just going to keep rolling as they keep coming in, and you guys will hear some more information about ballot drop boxes soon.
Excellent. Thank you, Ben. Actually, let's go ahead and let's just ask you. I'm sorry. Let's get to Gene and all of our questions, and then we'll queue up if we have a question for you. Gene, what have we got from all of our lovely chiefs and assistant chiefs here today?
Oh, we got some great stuff. We've got a mix of questions. You can tell we've had both experienced and new chiefs and assistant chiefs ask questions. So I'm going to turn this over to Susan, who's going to hand off questions to lots of people. And then after she's done, we will hand it over to Steve and keep the party going.
All right. So Ravi, the first question's for you. I've heard that there's a special election in November. Does this affect anything in November? Sorry, did I say November? I mean December. Special election in December. Does it affect the November election?
We're still in October, November, December. It all gets messy. No, here's the main thing. Of course, we have a large gubernatorial election occurring on November 4th, and with early voting ongoing for that. As some of you may have heard, there is a special election occurring on December 9th. That special election is limited to about 10% of the county. And we will contact the officers who live in that area about possibly serving that election. We'll prepare a separate chiefs briefing, everything for that election. There is one thing to be aware of that may potentially affect any precinct in this election. And that is that on election day, you may have a voter who has received an absentee mail ballot for the December special election who wants to know if they can drop it off during the November election. And the short answer to that is yes, they can deposit it in a drop box. Don't worry about it. Include it in your accounts. We'll take care of it in the office in terms of separating and accounting for that. That's really the only issue that's going to affect all of you potentially for this election in terms of things that arise from the overlap of the November election and the voting period starting for the December special election. But again, I want to stress that December special election is limited to only about 10% of the county and doesn't affect most of you in any other greater way.
Great, thanks. Steve, you want to give us the next question?
Sure. Let me ask a couple of questions to Sean Stewart. Sean, what credentials should we expect authorized representatives to present?
Hey, Steve, good morning, everybody. That's a great question. I hope the first thing they'd show up with is a big smile. But the more important thing that they need to show up with is the authorization letter from the local party chairman, or in the case of an independent candidate, from the independent candidate themselves. So you've got some great reference in the early part of your notebook, in chapter 1 in the overview, and then down in chapter 12 for authorized reps. But the key portion to remember there is that it should list their name and then be signed by the local party chairman or the independent candidate. And some reminders you'll see there in your chapter, right, is that they need to be a Virginia resident, or registered voter, excuse me, and do some other nice things like pay attention to your instructions and wear the badge that you provide them. So some great information in the notebook for that.
Thank you, Sean. Well, I've got you. I've got another question. Do we expect any visitors, observers, or international delegations this election?
So just as we're all excited for it to be the November general election, you may have noticed an uptick in interest on both the political side and the election administration side. So as always, be excited about folks coming in. You're going to have media. Some of you I know experienced some interest with folks coming out during the September special and some candidates visiting. So definitely expect an uptick in that. We've had one delegation that's already asked for permission. And as always, the information that we get ahead of time will be available to you. We'll get that information to the election officer team. They'll provide that ahead of time. But again, great information in your notebook. Pay attention to what the do's and don'ts, the cans and cannots for the media and other visitors to your polling locations. As always, just as everything else with provisionals, with voter information or anything, please reach out to us on election day if you need any information or need heads up, need advice, or just want to make sure that everything is the way it needs to be. So be excited. They're going to be folks interested in the great work you're doing on election day.
Thank you, Sean. My next question is for Cord. Cord, can the e-poll book scan the code on the digital driver's license?
Hi, Steve. Thank you. That's a great question. As it stands right now, no, the poll book cannot scan any sort of QR code or barcode out of the Virginia ID application. Although we would want them to show us the actual ID in the application. And then I'm forgetting the details, but they click on a section like My Information or My Details, so we can actually look up the voter and do a manual search that way. We can't use a screenshot or a photo out of like their photo application. It needs to be the actual Virginia ID application.
Thank you, Cord. Beth, I've got several questions that have come in that I think you're the best person for. So the first one is, I'm the chief of a co-located precinct. Are there any special instructions for me?
Thank you for that question. We have quite a few co-located precincts, and if you are the chief of one of those, you should be provided the contact information for the other chief. So please reach out to that chief and set up a mutually convenient setup time for your polling place. And in order to minimize confusion for that facility, it would be best if just one chief calls to arrange the Monday setup time. So that's really one of the most important things to remember is you must work together. You must go at the same time on Monday for setup. It just makes it easier on the facility. Also, it's helpful to post an election officer, and I'm going to give a shout out to those of you that will have an election page. This is a great job for them to post that individual at the entrance to the polling place so that they can help direct voters to the correct precinct line. Occasionally, if there are co-located precincts in the same room, like like say the cafeteria or the gym, there may be an ability to have one precinct do the outside signs and one do the inside signs, save the exception of the curbside voting, which is not a common sign. It has different phone numbers on it. So you may be able to coordinate that as well and help each other out.
Thank you, Beth. The second question is, what should a chief do if the facility contact does not respond to them?
That's an excellent question. We have that pop up every now and again. Most of the facility managers get right back, but in the event that you are having trouble making contact, please reach out to me, up to the office, and we'll make sure that that connection is made. So don't struggle with it. Give us a call right away if you feel like you're not getting through to the facility.
And I've got a couple of questions about high school pages. What's the best way to reach my high school page?
The the best way to reach your high school page is to text them. Okay, they tend to not be with the age being 16 and up, some of them aren't really connected into their email yet. They don't check it as often as they should, and occasionally, and for the most part, if you call them, they may not pick that up if it's a number they don't recognize. But if you text them, then believe me, they see those pretty much right away. So that's the best way to get in touch with your high school page. And I would encourage you, once again, is I want to reemphasize what Ravi said. The high school page is an integral part of your team. They have gone through training in order to serve as a page. This is a service learning opportunity. So please make every effort to reach out to them. If you have trouble, that's another time for you to give me a call and let me know so that I can help you make that connection.
Thanks, Beth. A couple more questions. Is there any information about what high school pages can do? And in particular, can they assist with the counting of the ballots? That's verifying that the packs of 200 actually have 200 ballots in them.
Right. Ravi showed a slide that is in your chief's notebook that shows you what pages can do. I always emphasize that. Most of the things they can do. What they cannot do is operate or supervise the voting equipment, which includes checking in voters, obviously using the electronic poll book. But they can be involved in every other aspect of the precinct on election day, observing, asking questions. Please involve them. They certainly can count packs of ballots throughout the day. The law permits that. So that's a great job for them. They can serve as greeters. They can help people, once again, in co-located precincts, find the correct line. So there's so many things that they can do. And I really encourage you to help make this a positive experience for them. The code contemplates this program to encourage voter registration. Well, now they can pre-register at 16. And so the goal is they get a good look at what the electoral process is, and it motivates them to be involved when they can register to vote.
Great. Thank you, Beth.
Sure.
Sean Rogers, I've got some questions for you. So when will we know how many e-poll books we will have?
Thanks for the question, Steve. The answer is right now. That information is published in our election officer portal. If you click on or tap on precinct info, you'll see the number of e-poll books that you have in your precinct for your planning purposes. Just remember that all of them are going to be in that one case. If you have 3 or if you have 5, there are slots for up to 5 of them. So you should have the same kind of space to think about in terms of storing them in your cage overnight or bringing them to your precinct. But for setup, you can see that right now in the election officer portal under precinct info.
Thanks. And a second question. Can the provisional log be checked at the end of the day to ensure that all the provisional ballots in the provisional bag were in fact entered into the log?
That's a great question, and I wish the answer were yes, but unfortunately it's not. That's something that's definitely on our radar. It's something that we hear a lot from you guys and makes total sense that that would be a great feature to offer. The way the system is set up right now, that's unfortunately not an option. Once you've submitted the provisional into the log, you won't be able to take a look at it again to double check, verify, confirm, or in any other way take a look at what you've submitted. That's why we recommend when your provisional specialist is with the voter, to make a quick check mark in the top left of the, the top right of the provisional envelope as a little reminder that they have gone ahead and entered it into the log to help make sure that they all get entered. But either way, we are able to reconcile that on the back end here in our office. If you do miss it, it's not the end of the world, but if we could offer you that, we would offer you that. We're looking for that at future elections. You may have heard us say that before. Hopefully we'll be able to offer that in the future, but at present, unfortunately, you cannot double check that.
Thanks, Sean. And will we be required to use separate boxes to secure the ballots extracted from each ballot scanner?
Great question. The answer is yes. You would be required to use different boxes for different ballot scanners. That's covered in the Chief's Notebook, Chapter 6, Closing. There's a guide for securing voted ballots. You can take a look at that now. It's posted online at on the election officer portal under Chief's Notebook. It's publicly available to anybody on the internet. You'll receive your hard copy next week at the Chief's Open House if you're coming to that. You can also grab a time slot in the election officer portal, or we'll send it to you in your black kit if you don't pick it up early. But to answer the question, yes, you'll use different boxes. This is covered in the checklist. Just be sure to hand those out to your officers who are performing your closing tasks or any other tasks so they can stay on task with the checklist.
Thanks, Sean. And Susan, I'll turn it back to you for more questions.
Super. So let's go to Arash with a couple of election officer questions. So Arash, what happens if someone looks at their portal and they see that they don't have the right number of officers? Say they're supposed to have 10, but there's only 9. What does that mean, and what do they do?
Sure. First off, that's a great question to be asking because that means that you have been looking through your portal, and we thank you for that. In that instance, there must have been a recent cancellation, and we're working on filling it. As soon as an officer is assigned and confirms their assignment, it will show up in the portal. So it's great that you're already looking and you notice that you're maybe one less than your recommended or quota number of election officers, but it will be replaced. I guarantee this team is on top of it, so it shouldn't be empty for long.
Great. Thanks for that. And then a question about setup. Are the schools open for election day and the day before to set up or not?
So on both Monday, November 3rd and Tuesday, November 4th, schools are closed. They are student holiday, teacher holiday, work days. So both days, the schools will be closed. You won't have to be weaving in and out of buses and dealing with access issues for setup. But make sure to contact with your polling place contact to make sure that there's no interruptions and issues for your setup.
All right. Hope everything goes smoothly there. Justin, a couple of supply questions for you. Where do we find the provisional supplies, like the envelopes and the notice forms? Is it in the black kit, or is it in the provisional bag, or someplace else?
Yes, so your provisional supplies will be sent out in your green provisional bag. It's a large bag that will be in the precinct cages on election morning, but within that, you'll find your overlays. Those will be in a manila envelope, as well as your envelopes and supplies and notices. So I did see a reference also where somebody was asking about the green pouch. Just remember that that will be separate from the green pouch that goes out in the Chief's kit that contains kind of your generic office supplies.
And so at the end of the day, what do we do with the unused provisional material?
Yep, so your unused provisional materials will go back inside that large provisional bag, the one that you were using to contain the envelopes on election day, and that will be only your unused materials. So that will just be your overlays, your unused envelopes, and your unused notices. Just remember that any voted provisional ballots will be inside their envelopes, which are going back to the office in the 1A envelopes. Big reason for that is that that large provisional bag, that's going back to the warehouse. It's not going back direct to the office, and provisionals need to be processed as soon as possible. So make sure that those go back to the office in the 1As.
And do the voter referral worksheets go back separately as well?
Yes, yes. The referral worksheets will be going the ones unused or used for the voters.
Sorry, the ones that are used.
Yeah, the used referral worksheets will be going back to the office inside envelope 8.
All right, great. And anything else we need to know about that green pouch?
Just remember that during the day that will be locked and sealed, so it sets up very easily. there's just two flaps inside that open up, and then it Velcros along the sides, and then you're just able to zip that up and connect the seal and the lock to the little grommet on the side of it.
Great, thanks for that. Tyrone, we have a equipment question for you. Now that we have a single big poll book, e-poll book case, is that going to fit in the gray cage with the scanners overnight?
Great question. That is a change for this election. And the answer is yes. Of course, the scanners will remain in the cage on Monday night, but there are materials that you can remove from the cage in your pre-setup. And it provides enough room in the center between the two scanners to place the e-poll books.
And I assume that's in a guide?
Yes, there are pictures in the Chief's notebook that will actually show you where that will fit very easily.
Good, thanks, Tyrone. Moving on to Cheryl. If we have somebody who drops an absentee ballot in the drop box, but it's just the ballot, no envelope or anything, what do we do with that?
You just leave it in the drop box. You're not responsible for anything in the drop box except at the end of the night, putting everything that's in there into the trip lock bag. If someone approaches the drop box with a naked ballot and says, "Can I just put my ballot in the drop box?" The election officer at the drop box is very, I say they can tell the voter, you need your outside envelope. Do you have that at home? Can you get it? Do you have it in the car? Something, because they need that outside envelope because that has the voter's name on it. It has their precinct. We need that. Also, the voter is supposed to have filled out the back with their name and their signature and so forth. So if the voter brings a naked ballot, the election officer can say, "Hey, you really need the outside," and then maybe the voter says, "Oh, I've got it in the car," or "I've got it at home. I'll run home and get it." But if the voter says, "Oh, God, I trashed that. I don't have that anymore," that's fine. You can't tell a voter that they can't put a ballot in the box. But because we don't know who it came from, there's not much that can be done with the ballot. But you don't have to worry about it. It's not your concern. Just put everything in there. People will even put something in the drop box. It's not a ballot. It may be an application to change their address. It may be a form to take them off of the permanent absentee list. So don't worry about that. That's just an easy way for people to get materials back to us. Sometimes we do get doctor bills and we would just forward those on. we don't need the doctor bills, but don't worry about anything that's in there. Stick it all in the trip lock bag.
And a related question, if someone comes in and wants to surrender their absentee ballot and get a regular ballot to vote, does it matter if they have the envelope for that?
No, not at all. All they need to do is surrender the ballot because they'll be marked in your poll book as an absentee voter. So it's not a problem. It's the ballot that's the ticket to vote in person.
Great. Thanks for clearing that up. Bushra, we have a question about same-day registrations. So how many same-day registrations are we expecting? And is there anything particular you want to share with chiefs on getting those done correctly?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for all of your hard work to ensure every eligible voter in Fairfax County vote and cast their ballot. And thank you again for testing my prediction for how many SDR we'll have again for this election. I think based off the number of undeliverable sample ballot that we received back, maybe I predict 3,000 to 4,000 SDR. And The other recommendation for SDR, please just make sure that the person first eligible to do SDR, second, double check the information was filled out, the application was filled out correctly. And please call us for any eligibility, any question that is require our attention, or you have a doubt to decide if this is SDR or not, or you cannot find the vote on the poll book. Thank you again for your hard work.
Great, thank you, Bushra.
Sure.
So now back to Ravi. Can you tell us what the rules are for someone who comes into the polling place who's an elected official, but is not a candidate or, the electoral board?
Sure. Yeah, we see this in different elections from time to time. If someone is a current elected official, they're allowed to briefly visit polling places for a limited period of time. But what they're not allowed to do is to campaign or electioneer inside the polling place or inside the 40-foot prohibited area, just like anyone else. If you do get someone who comes by and they seem to be staying there for a long time, give us a call. We'll help walk you through it. We don't expect this to be a large situation in this election, but if it does occur, we're happy to help you with it.
Great, thanks. And then is the notebook, the chief's notebook on the admin tablet, is that searchable?
Oh, I wish it were. Trust me, we're working with our IT team. It's not searchable yet for this election, but we hope to find a way to make that searchable for you next year. I know Justin's also worked on some stuff to make the list of supplies searchable for you in a future election. We've just been very busy with a lot of elections this year. I think we may end up with 5 elections in a 9-month span that we're working on here in our office. And that just made it a little bit more challenging for us to do some of the extra things we'd like to be able to do for you. But we hope we can resume those next year.
Ravi, if I can add though, for the Chief's Notebook posted on the admin tablet, it's not searchable, but the table of contents, you can tap on any page in the table of contents to jump to that section at the very least. So if you're looking for something there, you can just scroll through the table of contents and you can at least jump in that way.
That's exactly right. Thank you so much, Sean. That's a really helpful tip for all of our chiefs and assistant chiefs. I want to harken back to one of the questions someone asked earlier about just the overlap between this large general election and the small special election that we're going to have in December. We talked about if a voter wants to drop off their ballot in the drop box, but what happens if a voter brings a ballot to surrender? So I actually want to ask Ben to jump in on this. This is something you want to be mindful of. If a voter brings in a ballot for for the December election and asks to surrender it, that does get handled a little bit differently. And Ben, how would someone know which elections absentee ballot someone might bring in? And again, remember, this is limited to mostly precincts the 100th, the Baddock district.
Yeah, so we have, as soon as I can share correctly here, we have updated our envelopes for the Braddock District Special so that you can see exactly what is going on. And if someone can confirm that you can actually see that I'm sharing, excellent. So the outer envelope normally has the date of the regular election here. November will have the November election. In big bold letters, we have put Braddock District Special Election. So you'll be able to identify it by that on the outer envelope, which is the dark blue envelope. If you look at, if they bring in their return envelope with their ballot, you will see Braddock District Special at the top right here, and there is a giant bold B right here. Now, this is generally for our internal processing. It helps us identify them when we're going through the mail ballots as they come in mail trays, but it's also a very easy way to identify that this is very specifically a Braddock District Special ballot. Now, we're only mailing approximately 8,000 of them, so I would wager that you're not going to see too many of them, but they will be hitting mailboxes the weekend before the November general election. So they will be available for voters if they do bring them in. The other thing is these cannot be exchanged for a November ballot. It is not a November ballot, and it cannot be exchanged to get one at the polling place on the November 4th election.
That's great and a very helpful visual, Ben. Thank you. And so, in short, again, we think this is very unlikely in any precinct that's not in Braddock District. But if you see an envelope that says Braddock District Special Election on it, that's when you can give us a call. or let the voter know that that is not an envelope that can be surrendered. Jean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've gotten just about all the questions that were submitted.
We certainly have. Thank you. It's
Excellent.
a great group of people.
Yes, it is. It's I think that's a very odd point. We have such a wonderful group of all of you who step up to serve as chiefs and assistant chiefs. We could never do elections without you. I'm coming up. This is now my 9th general election in this office since having started working in this office. And it has been an absolute privilege and honor to work with all of you. And we hope that many or all of you will show up to our Chiefs Open House next Tuesday on October 21st. As a reminder, that's happening from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And you can sign up for a time slot right now in the election officer portal. But yeah, it'll be wonderful to see you all there who are able to make it. You'll be able to pick up a copy of your Chiefs notebook at that time. And just overall, we really appreciate all of the questions that you have all submitted for this briefing. We hope we've provided you with the information that you need to have a successful election. Now, remember, we're 3 weeks away from Election Day, and if you have any questions at any time, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And your final reminders here then are simply make sure to take the Chiefs Briefing quiz later today once we email that to you. Make sure to get that done by this Sunday. And then for next week, we'll remind you of some of the tasks that we have coming up. And of course, next Tuesday, we've got our Chief Open House, but then we also have some additional workshops coming up. Sean, do you want to provide a quick reminder to everyone about which workshops are coming up and when they might be able to sign up for them?
Sure, thanks, Ravi. We don't have any this week, but starting immediately after our Chiefs Open House next Tuesday, for the remainder of that week and the following week, so that's the week before the election, we have some of our optional workshops available to you if you want some additional practice. We have our Provisional Specialist Workshop that's primarily intended for provisional specialists to get some hands-on experience, but chiefs and assistant chiefs are able to sign up for that one as well if you want to get that practice as well. The main two that I would recommend, though, are the Chiefs Workshop and the Closing Procedures Workshop. You'll find several of those on the calendar next week and the following week. The Chiefs Workshop will help you through during the day things and non-routine and provisional voters. And the Closing Procedures Workshop is focused entirely on closing procedures. And so it gives you a lot of hands-on things to work through with that. Both of those are 3 hours. Take a look in the election officer portal for more information. It'll give you full descriptions and times for those if you're interested. Again, they're optional, just if you want to come by.
Great, thank you, Sean. We've actually been receiving requests from other election jurisdictions here in Virginia to attend some of our open houses and workshops, and we're looking forward to hosting them over the next couple weeks as well. With that, we are at the end of our time here today. So again, we look forward to seeing you at an open house or a workshop coming up. We hope you have all the resources that you need to have a successful election. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything. And overall, it's a privilege and honor to work with all of you towards a successful election this year. Thanks so much and have a great preparation towards Election Day. Thanks, everyone.